Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Suni Zmich. Looking forward to our conversation again. Suni's been on the podcast before, had a fantastic conversation, and this is going to be a great one too. So I'm looking forward to this. So, healing. What does healing mean to you, Suni?
Oh, thanks for asking, Simon. So, I think what healing means for me is that when my trauma no longer affects my current day judgment, and by effects, I mean negatively affecting it. And certainly our past is always going to be a part of our present, and it will affect our judgment in positive ways, hopefully, if we learn from it. But healing means that I can move forward without the shackles of my trauma.
Beautiful. I love it all. I love it all. And I'm very interested in the term judgment. Right. So what do you mean by judgment?
Okay, by judgment, I don't mean being judgy, right? So that's not that's not what I mean. Judgment, meaning my decision-making process.
Okay. So do you remember the first time you had that thought? Did you have that thought before I asked you the question? Had you had that thought?
No, before you asked the question, I did not have that thought. So you made me really think about it. That it just means, to me, it just means that I have better discernment. Because when I was younger and I was still trapped in my trauma, I was certainly an idiot.
Yeah.
So I hopefully I'm less of an idiot these days because
Yeah.
I do feel like my judgment is better. And by judgment, I mean having my eyes open to the needs of others or to their perhaps their traumas or their motivations. And maybe my definition might unfold compassion, which I certainly didn't have as much of when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I think healing is not only an inward action, but it also extends to other people because you
Yeah.
have more grace for
Yeah.
things that happen
Yeah.
with our fellow human beings.
Yeah. I love that. So I was talking to Jill Uchiyama, who's been on the show today. She's a filmmaker, and we were talking about some ideas a couple of weeks ago, and we're looking at a film, and something that came to me is this idea that this central tenet of filmmaking is that it's called the hero's two journeys. Right? It's called the hero's two journeys, and how it relates to what you're just saying is the hero's two journeys are, one is the outward journey, and the other one is the inward journey, right? So the inner journey is what's going on for us internally, and the outward journey is what's going on in our relationships with other people. So we might be focused on our adopted parents, we might be focused on our biological parents, we might be focused on both, and to look at those as like feelings are an inside job. Yeah. So we're looking at the inner journey with our feelings, and but the world around us, and so it's separating, discerning, to use your word, which I think is a great one. It's discerning, the environment and other people, and our kind of internal environment. And if we can kind of separate those, if we can separate those two, then then hopefully we will be, and I will be, as you are, less, I will be less of an idiot. I will cause less stuff. I will cause less damage. Yeah. So let me give you an example about what I'm talking about. So I got a message from somebody, a fellow adoptee, and it became, I had really messed up. Okay. I'd messed up. And when I read that email, in the past, that email telling me that I'd messed up would have really upset me. How could I do that? How could I be so silly? Instead, when the email landed in my inbox, I could see the truth in what the person said, right? So I know that I need to change, but the need for me to change isn't like isn't a charged need. Do you know what I mean? I can be I can look forward and hopefully be a better person without beating myself up about what I've done in the past with this particular person. Do you see? Mm-hmm.
So for you, do you think healing means that you stop beating yourself up for things that you've done in the past?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I would also have been triggered. So when that email landed, if that email had landed, the one that had landed a couple of days ago, if that had landed, say, 6 months ago, because I did a bit of some therapy stuff before Christmas, I think, and that shifted a few things for me. If that landed 6 months ago, I would have actually felt, like people go red in the face when they're embarrassed.
Yes.
When I make a mistake, I kind of feel red all over.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's a flush of, I don't know, embarrassment, pain, shame, beating myself up. And something shifted through this therapy work that I've done. And so I know I know I need to change my behavior, whatever. But I wasn't triggered by the email landing.
What specifically, that's really interesting. I hope that's okay that I ask, but what specifically helped you in therapy to make that subtle shift?
Okay. So that's the interesting bit, because I started the therapy looking at pre-verbal trauma. So we did body work in the therapy session. Obviously there was some talking, but it wasn't like a talk therapy session. It was it was some mysterious ninja stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, that happens through doing body work, right? So do you know what I mean? It's pre-verbal, it's non-verbal, I did some work about basically feeling pain, anger, frustration in my body. And where did the therapist say, well, where did you start? Like looking at the pain in the chest. I'm feeling it in the chest. And then I actually, as she was doing it, I actually felt it was like a ball, and it started in my chest, and it ran down one arm to my hands, and it ran down the other arm to my hands. And it to me, that kind of signified, if it signifies anything, the need to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the need to do something. So it's like maybe it's an avoidance tactic. So, for example, like so I'm bored, right? So I think, all right, what am I going to do now to get? I need to do something to get out of my boredom. That's what I felt. That's what it felt to me in the therapy sessions when we're talking about that. So, yeah. But it's mystical ninja stuff, because you're working on pre-verbal trauma.
Oh, I absolutely believe in that. Your body holds, our bodies hold our memories before we were able to speak. And there are certain things that trigger it. In fact, I was just writing about that yesterday, my experience in Korea.
Yeah.
I definitely had pre-verbal memories that surfaced as I went through the markets and all the smells and sights and tastes. Everything just triggered something in me that I couldn't assign a specific memory to, but I knew that I had been there before. So that what you're describing in your body is where you hold those memories because you don't have the language for it.
Indeed. And
Mhm.
to me, the idea that I've had on the back of that was that we feel the past in the present. We feel, and you mentioned something about that along those lines. You use past and present. We feel the past in the present. So yeah, we feel our past in the present, and then you've got this separation, and I think you've got a differentiation between, I think it's implicit memory and explicit memory. So the implicit memory is the stuff that you haven't got words for, right? You
Yes.
don't remember. You don't remember walking. You don't remember being sat in a pram being pushed around the market when you were a kid.
In a pram, that means a stroller.
A stroller, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep, yep.
You don't remember that, so it's not an explicit memory. It's an
Right.
implicit memory. Something's being triggered when you're walking around the market in Korea, present day or whatever it was. Then it's triggered an implicit memory.
Yes. That's fascinating. And I'm so pleased and happy for you that you were able to look at it and identify it, not run away from it, and that it's helped you move into a positive mindset.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
And we're not, as a human race, I don't think we're very good at spotting our own change. Like
Mm.
we spend so much time in our own heads that, you know, the little voice is usually a negative one rather than a positive one.
Yeah, sure, can be. Yep.
So the other idea I want to talk about from what you said, you talked about the shackles of your trauma, and you talked about breaking free. Oh no, you talked about being trapped. That's one, isn't it? Trapped by our trauma. Now there's a metaphor. There's a metaphor.
An
So
alliterative metaphor.
yeah, we love a bit of alliteration, don't we? Trapped by our trauma and shackled to our trauma, so that we're kind of, to use a different metaphor, the one that came to mind as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that we see the world through adoptees' lenses. Yeah.
You and I do, sure, because we're both adoptees. Yes.
And we've both got glasses on, funnily enough. But yours are cooler than mine, right? So when you think about the judgment, when the judgment and not judging people, but decision making and things like that, if we are trapped, if we're trapped by our trauma, trapped in our trauma, if we're shackled to our trauma, then we view the world through a trauma lens, don't we? So healing is ceasing to view others and the world through a trauma lens. So it's almost like it's like, you know, like you can't see. Are you a skier? Have you ever been snow skiing? You ever tried that?
I have tried it. I am not proficient, not even close. But yes, I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Did you Did you wear sunglasses or goggles when you were skiing? Do you remember, or both?
I wore sunglasses.
You wore sunglasses, right? Okay. So if you put a pair of yellow sunglasses on, right, you can't see white snow. You just see yellow snow. Yeah.
Yes.
You just see yellow snow because our lens is determining what we see. So it's almost as if you're talking healing as taking the yellow sunglasses off when you're on the ski slope and seeing white snow.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Certainly, for me, healing started to happen when I looked at other angles. So not just through the lens of the adoptee, but through parents and birth parents. It also opened my eyes to the fact that everyone who approaches the adoption community, or almost everyone, comes to it with a little bit of shackled trauma themselves. And so understanding that is really what helped me heal. So for you, it was taking your yellow glasses off. For me, it was talking and listening to other people and hearing and really hearing their stories.
Yeah. And that was presumably during the process of writing your book or before you wrote the book, was it? Before they wrote the book?
It was during the book writing process.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do any particular moments come to mind when you saw that for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Or not the first time, but at a deeper level? So.
Oh, for sure. The most notable one for me was when I met my first birth mother. So I didn't know that she was a birth mother when someone introduced me to her. So when we commenced with the interview, I thought she was an adoptive mother. But obviously, within the first minute or two, I figured out, but we kept on with the interview. And just her, oh gosh, she was so emotional and so genuine and just a beautiful person. Just understanding that her trauma came before her daughter was even born. Just something about that story, understanding that the trauma didn't necessarily start with her daughter, but with the mother's circumstance. Just, it brought me to tears. It just, and then speaking to subsequent birth parents helped me understand that there's more to the community than just adoptees. And so, not that I was glad that they were hurting, but the fact that I was not alone in my own hurt was what really helped me move forward.
Was that because was there an element of you seeing how your birth mother's trauma had impacted you while you were in utero, or was that I'm barking up the completely wrong tree there?
Oh, well, that's another angle too. Certainly it had to have affected me. Because when I'm a mother and I was pregnant twice, and certainly your baby becomes a part of who you are. It's the symbiotic relationship when you're pregnant. And certainly when I was upset, I could feel my baby in utero. She was also upset. Or it just, so you can't, there's no way that a baby can be born and taken and, be surrendered for adoption, there's no way that that baby doesn't remember the time in utero. And
In the
so,
what's it? The implicit memory stuff, yeah.
yes, there's absolutely no way that that won't affect a baby.
And no one's expressed that quite as clearly to me as you just did then. So I think what you said is, if you're upset, your baby's upset. Is that what you said?
Yes, I did.
And
so think about
did
the
that get you
trauma.
thinking about your birth mother?
Yes. So yes, thank you for bringing back that question. My short-term memory these days escapes me especially when I go off on a tangent. But yes, it did get me. So thinking about my birth mother. So in interviewing all of these birth parents, what ended up helping me heal was understanding and subsequently forgiving my birth mother. Because there's no way that she could have surrendered without any trauma of her own. And her trauma came first.
Do you remember the moment when that kind of spontaneous forgiveness happened?
Probably after I had time to reflect with this first birth mother's interview.
Do you remember how that felt in the moment? Do you remember a specific moment around that?
I don't know if it was a specific moment, but it was just trying to give a bit, like maybe I had been this overfilled balloon for my entire life, and then finally the knot was released, and it just, released all of the hurt and emotion and anger and just that amalgam of just that quagmire of emotions. That's all mixed up into your origin story, just kind of released, because I finally had understanding. And so the healing, I think, for me, happens when you have understanding of someone else's life and their situation and their circumstance. And I have not met my birth mother. And I don't actually think I will. I've tried, and that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Went to Korea last year. But just understanding what she must have felt helped me step forward.
Yeah. I don't know whether, do you realize the profundity of the stuff that you're sharing here?
I do, but I have thought about this quite a bit. I've been, writing quite a bit, and so I have examined this. Yes.
You're bringing tears to my eyes on this stuff. Good ones.
Oh,
No, good ones.
Simon.
Good ones. Good ones. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm
Putting some
honored.
stuff into words, right? So, no, listeners, she's making a frown face. This is good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes I watch, when I get that feeling often when I talk to, we've had a few birth mothers on the show now. When I speak to birth mothers, when I watch birth mothers on telly, it often makes me cry, because it takes me back to a moment very similar to the moment you had when the balloon burst. And I was asking you about the moment because in my experience, it has been. It's a thing that happens. Healing is a thing that happens in the moment. It happens.
Can you tell me about your experience?
Sorry?
I'm very curious. Can you tell me about your experience?
Well, yeah, I can. I'm hesitating slightly, but did I tell you about reading the letter from my birth mother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So listeners have heard this before. Sorry, listeners, but it was that, right? So
Okay.
I read the letter. I read the letter from Patricia, my birth mother, and floods of tears came down my face, and they made me realize, well, they gave me the empathy like you gave the empathy. They gave me the insight like you gave the insight, and they, for me, the insight shifted 40 seconds of the most profound pain I've ever felt. And I realized I'd been wrong in those 40 seconds. And you put it beautifully, her trauma came before mine. That's kind of similar vibe to what I got. I also got the power imbalance, which was an interesting one. I felt the power imbalance between my birth mother, Pat, who was 22, and the social worker who was presumably older, but in a position of authority. I got that power imbalance, and I got kind of most of all, I got her desperation. I got my birth mother's desperation. I felt her desperation, and I felt there was no. I felt connected with her. I felt she and me were one, and it's those moments that of insights that take are mind blowing, literally mind blowing in a good way. They blow our mind. They blow our false beliefs out of the water, and that's why I'm so delighted that you could remember that stuff, because we're hoping that what's the podcast about? I'm getting tingly now just thinking it. What we're trying to do, we're trying to catalyze some insights. We're trying to share our healing moments. Now I'm getting goosebumps all over. We're trying to share our insights in the hope that catalyzes insights, and we're going deep, but there's no it's an infinite depth thing that we're here.
I agree.
Do any other healing moments come to mind?
When I went to Korea last August, my family and I went. There were several moments that were both. It was somewhat of a mixture. So in America, as a minority, as a Korean, I'm very aware that most people around me are not Asian. And so being in Korea, stepping off the plane, just being in a sea of Asian people in a city, and everyone I just blended in, except for my American clothes, obviously, but they knew I was American in that way. But the few times that I did have on outfits that were somewhat Korean, unless I opened my mouth, I felt like I belonged. So that was healing. And then of course then there's a duality to it. So if I try to order a cup of coffee or something something pretty normal. I also felt sad because I wasn't able to speak the language that I was supposed to speak. I mean, and so I couldn't just have a lighthearted conversation with anybody because I didn't have the language. So then I was reminded, okay, there's a duality to me. I'm very much American, but the Korean part of me is undeniable. So it was healing being in my country of origin in some ways, but it also brought up reminders that my situation is not unique because there are other Korean adoptees, but unusual.
What went on for you when I was thinking about their expectations? So you go into a shop, somebody, the person, well, you go into a coffee shop, whatever, you go into a cafe, you walk to the till, and then and the Korean person behind the till looks at you and expects you to talk Korean to her.
Yes.
And you talk.
And then the minute I opened, right. And well, no, I don't talk English. I did take some Korean lessons. So I speak like a toddler.
Oh, okay.
I speak Korean like a toddler. So I can order coffee, but then if there's anything more to that, I can't. And obviously my accent is American. So oftentimes they would just switch over to English for me.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get away with it if I had to speak.
Yeah.
There's I did order a pair of shoes from a beautiful shoemaker, and he made them custom for me because I have very unusual size feet. And when I went to pick them up, a woman was outside taking a picture, trying to get a selfie with him because he's very famous in Korea. And so she looked at me and she just handed me her phone, and I knew what she was saying. I didn't, take a picture of us, so I did. And I handed it back to her, and it was a wordless transaction. So that was fun for me because she thought I was Korean, not an adopted Korean. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good day.
But it doesn't sound like it jarred for you. It doesn't sound like it was a jarring experience when yes, you ordered the coffee, and you can order the coffee because you know enough to order the coffee, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of charge to the frustration for you.
Oh, well, I think it wasn't really, I wouldn't say it was frustrating.
No.
I think the adjective I might assign to it was maybe a melancholy or a sadness, or kind of more of a longing, because I knew I was there, and it just made me sad that I couldn't. But at the same time, just being in the presence of my people of origin was very extremely happy for me. Or that brought joy, and my life revolves around food. And so my digestive system that week was beautiful because all of the food, Korean food, agrees with me physically. And so that was just healing, just in taking in the food from that was grown in the soil in Korea. I can have Korean food in America, but there's something a little different about it. But being in Korea, and when we went to my hometown where my orphanage was, very small, we went to a restaurant, and the earthiness of the kimchi and the mushrooms was like none other that I had ever had. And that felt very healing to me.
Have you heard the word terroir?
No.
So I don't know if I pronounced it particularly. It's a French word. So
say it again.
It's terroir. I can't remember. It's like, when the word territory, think of the word territory, right? It's a bit like that. So winemakers talk about the terroir, which is basically the essence of the soil, right, and the climate, and it's the kind of it's the X factor of the vineyard. Right? That's what that was the thing that came to me when you talked about the earthiness of it, and it tasted. It was the taste of home, wasn't it? It was the taste of home. It was the terroir of home.
Absolutely, it was.
So we're into a multi-sensual. We're into a multi-sensual thing here. Yeah. We've moved way past the kind of verbal stuff. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It was, I'm certain I probably tasted it as a baby, or in utero even, the kimchi and the flavors, and absolutely, yes. So not only do you feel the mother's motions, but you absolutely physically get the taste in your mouth as an infant too.
It's the taste of home. It's like being home.
It was like being home, but it was also not, because I can't deny that American food culture is in me too. So it's like I originated there, but then I was carved out in America and shaped, molded differently. So when I go back, it's just not quite right, but it is right, but it isn't. The duality of it's just, runs parallel, and there's just, you can't remove one.
Yeah, it cuts both ways.
It does.
But there doesn't seem to be a lot of confusion there. You're not confused about it cutting both ways. You're kind of happy. You're happy-ish. You're content with the cutting both ways. Apart from, did mention about the melancholy.
I am content. I don't know that I am content. I mean, I talking about it, you're hearing the happy side, right? So the happy side of fitting, but I don't know that overall I'm happy about it. It is very it's a push-pull thing. So depending on the day, some days I might be happier about it. Some days it makes me very sad, because I don't necessarily have a way to fit in either culture. So lately I've been communing with other Korean adoptees, and there's a comfort level that we have with each other, even though we don't know each other very well, because it's that same displacement that we all have. What's the word? Diaspora. Right? Right. So and we don't have to try to explain it to anybody. It is just something that's understood. And so we can hang out, and we don't have to have deep conversations, but we can hang out and have a meal or just be. And don't have to get into a deep conversation necessarily, unless we want to, but there's already that understanding.
It's unsaid, isn't it? It's an unsaid bond.
Yeah.
I came up with this idea this morning, which was at peace with the war. Yeah. So I can't think of it. I can't think of an example. So sometimes I've got two voices in my head. Right. So it's a not very civil war. Right. One is saying, all right, so I'll give you an example. Right. One would be, Simon, you're still not making enough of a difference, and you're not making a living out of making a living out of making a difference, and that and you should have done, right? So that's one thing. And then I would say that another part with me is say it doesn't matter, Simon. None of that matters. Forget about that. You've got past that. Don't worry about it, right? So there's a war going on in my head between these two things, and then I get upset about that war, right? But being at peace with the war is saying, well, one side of your brain's always going to say that, Simon, and the other side of the other side of your brain is going to say the other thing, and that's just the way it is. So these two thoughts are never going to reconcile. They're never going to come to peace. They're always going to be at war. But you can be at peace with the war.
And by at peace, you don't mean peaceful, you just mean acceptance, right?
I mean, yeah,
okay.
Accept. Well, yeah, I do mean peace. I do actually mean peace.
Mean peace? Okay.
Yeah, at one level up. So you
level
could
up.
be, yeah, it's one level up from acceptance, probably a couple of levels up from acceptance.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm there. I think I recognize the war, and I accept that there is a war because I don't have a choice. But for me, it's delving into both sides, and it doesn't mean I have to like it. So there I sound like a toddler, I guess. But I do understand, and I've wrapped my brain around that there's always going to be two sides to me.
Yeah.
There's going to be the American side and there's going to be the Korean side. And just, I think it's going to be a lifelong journey for me trying to put the two pieces together or bridging it. So that, I think that's probably where the difference is. I don't know that I'll ever be at peace about it, but I certainly accept that that's my reality.
But and a lot of people that I've interviewed have had a lot less peace.
Sure. I mean, sure, you're gonna, you can fight it, or you can look at it and examine it. And so I think in the examination for me is where the healing comes. I mean, that's to bring it full circle, you want to talk about healing, but for me, healing comes along in the examination of my adoption.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to say is I'm not always at peace with the war.
Oh, okay.
It's not a steady state. It's not a steady state. It's not constant. It's not like we've had, it's not like it's done over and done.
Okay, got it.
Comes back, yeah. So
okay, so you're human. That's good.
And that's it, yeah. So I mean, this is the thing, really. Yeah, that is human. If we're okay with not, I've said this, if we're okay with not feeling okay, we're always okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'll buy that.
Good, because we're out of time.
Okay. Well, it was lovely to see you again, Simon. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. It was lovely. Loved the conversation. Yeah. Yes. So listeners, there's a link in the show notes to Suni's last episode and her book, which is great. Book is all about experiences of other Korean adoptees, and adopted parents.
All adoptees, domestic and international.
Oh yeah,
and
sorry.
Parents and adoptive parents. So many perspectives.
all sides of the constellation. Fantastic. Thanks, Suni.
Okay, thanks, Simon.
Thanks, listeners. See you soon. Bye.